Alex Merklinger's Mysteries of the Mind. And now your host, Alex Merklinger.
Welcome to our show, my friends. This young man, Clif. Clif, I'm going to change your name, okay? I'm going to just refer to you as Clif Bot. How's that?
Okay, that's fine.
I've
been called a lot worse.
Yeah, I know. No, and only because, because a lot of people say, well, how come Clif doesn't want us to know what his last name is? Well, I
can be real honest about that in any number of levels. I don't want to buy into this cult of personality. I don't want the aggravation of people annoying me. I've got a lot of work to do.
And you didn't want to, as you told me, you didn't want to attract a lot of attention and blah, 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 which I respect and I do understand. However, the work you're doing is, we went through this the last time you were on, and I got to be honest with you, Clif, it is still so far beyond me and my understanding that I have to totally focus on what you say. I understand what you say. But however you got it is some of the most incredible stuff I've ever heard of in my life.
Well, it's been a long progression. I mean, this did not come about instantly. I've been doing computer work. I think like my first job was writing help files and executables for Microsoft for their version of C 4.5 in the 80s.
Huh.
So been with it a long time, and it's grown over time. And it's been a gradual awakening and insight as to how language works, and especially how the changes seem to precede changes in human behavior.
In human behavior, is that in literal behavior, meaning action?
Correct.
Or I was going to say state of mind,
well, it all goes to
consciousness?
that. You can't separate it. Many humans, in fact, a human cannot make an action without altering their state of mind. Correct?
Yeah, that's true.
So,
that's true.
Any kind of alterations, any kind of changes that cause ripples in how language is used could be picked up.
Okay. In putting these programs together, where does the idea start? I mean, how did you ever come across the concept of the Webbot runs? Because it's so fantastic to me. I mean, it just reminds me of truly divine revelation almost.
Okay, we'll have to back up a bit. I don't know that that's really a factor in it so much. Let's go to the more prosaic actual derivation of how it happened, right?
Okay.
At one point, Microsoft had this big project for a product they called SMS. I forget what the acronym actually stood for. But it was like System Management Services or something. And basically the idea was that you'd have a master server somewhere you could plop on your network, and it would run around on the network while people weren't busy. And it would constantly figure out what needed to be updated where in the software and do it all automatically behind the background. Plus, the real benefit was to theoretically do a complete inventory of the entire system. And at that time, we're talking about very complex PCs that had all these different kinds of cards and stuff in them, and it was going to automatically survey the PC and dump all this stuff in a database. Well, as may be expected, when they ran this thing initially, they had what we in the industry would call an operational failure. It worked. It'd go out in the network and just scope out like mad, come back, put it into the database. Problem was, anytime you asked the database a question, it would take about 3.5 or 4 days before it finally started spitting something out to you.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience with the idea of how you effectively go out and look at things on networks. They had hired me to come on up and maybe tweak some stuff for them, and in the process I got a few really good ideas. And one of them was, why bother to store information about each and every one of the computers and cards and everything multiple times? Because basically we were just populating our database over and over and over again with essentially the same information.
Yeah.
So I said, why don't we just store information about the language we're using to describe this? So we store the word, AudioVox 386 card, blah, 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 once. And then every time we want to repeat that, we say, aha, here's another instance of that, and we make this little connection between integers. Now, what it did was it shifted the complexity from a system that had, at the time I was brought in, they had a version operating that had 400 plus tables in a SQL Server database. And what I did was what I thought of as flopping the database and converted it over to 7 tables. They were massively deep, but they were very heavily indexed. And they were all essentially integer-to-integer relationships. And so it made the searches very fast, and it would start spitting out the data within seconds. I think our first hit was like 20 seconds later, as opposed to 3+ days. The issue is, of course, it would still take 12 days to spit out all the data that you had accumulated on a particular network if it was very large, but at least you didn't have to wait the 3 days for it to start.
Does
that make sense?
Well, yes, but it's still, I understand what you're saying, and I never thought I was stupid. But I remember years ago when computers really just started to come into their own, for the general public. And I bought a computer, a laptop, and I forget who made it. And I bought it and I took it home. And do you know that I never even knew how to turn it on? Nobody told me what to do. Nobody even explained where the computer was. I finally gave it away. But I never knew how to turn it on. That's how backwards. So then I had a friend of mine that used to write programs. And he was, matter of fact, he was a state trooper from Arkansas. And he was trying to explain, he said, about computers, we talked about, and I said, I can't get into computers until I can understand the concept.
I understand, exactly.
Yeah, because I had to know that before I could allow myself to start to really get interested in it.
And so you went on out and read The Heart of the Machine and that kind of thing.
No, he tried to explain it to me.
Oh, okay.
And I think I had a fairly good understanding. So when you say, do you understand? Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying. But my gosh.
But it's still clear as mud, right?
Yeah, right. I mean,
I get you. Yeah.
Cliff, it's phenomenal to me on many different levels. Number one, the knowledge that you have of this science, and it is a science, isn't it?
A nascent one, I would agree with you. Yes.
And then to take it a step further from just being a science is to begin to understand how the subconscious mind of human beings, plural, work, and how you are able to literally, with the program that you designed, begin to tap into knowledge that is within the subconscious mind of people.
But we do it badly. I mean, let's not get all whipped up here, because look how far off we were on some of the stuff on Cindy Sheehan.
Well,
okay, true, back in April in Alta 405, we posted that a female aspect would arise during a period of an oil crisis or brouhaha, and she would wear the aspect of grief and so on. And we got a few more of the details right. And we knew, for instance, that there would be a supplication and an asking for an audience involved, right?
Yeah.
But we really blew it, because my interpretation was, well, okay, background of an oil crisis. A lot of this was coming from our oil entity, and there were cross-links back over to the populous entity, US of A subsection. But the way I read it was, okay, the woman and the grief aspect were separate from the supplication of the official, and that it was actually going to be an official attempting to get some kind of an audience relative to oil. So you see, we got it all. It was like a big stew, and we picked it out wrong. Make sense?
Well, yes, it does. But the information was there. It was your interpretation that was wrong.
Oh, quite correct.
See,
yeah.
So there. I mean, that's my point. My gosh, yes. Maybe your interpretation was a little off, because you were 90% right on, and it's not over with.
I wouldn't go that high. We got to be a lot harsher on ourselves here if we're going to have any kind of intellectual honesty and be able to go to sleep at night.
Well,
right?
okay.
Okay, we got the words right. I mean, we got female, we got grief, we got supplication, we got official, audience, etc. But if I'd just been, smart enough and to leave that as well enough alone and shove it out there, but these reports would be quite boring if not placed into context. And that's where I started screwing it up, because I started saying, well, logically, oil crisis, official, etc.
Yeah, but Cliff, it's not over yet. She's coming back.
Well, I know there's another issue there as well that's rather not distressing, but I find distasteful because I hate doing these kinds of things on individuals.
Yeah.
We had this situation where, like I say, back in April we got that. This was just in a regular old, it's what we call a serendipitous run, where we start off with a few seed websites, maybe 100,000 or so, and then tell it, follow it down 256 layers and get back to me, and if we still have more time and bandwidth, we'll send you off again. And then we just let things rise after it goes through those initial 100,000 seed sites.